Alright, so I'm here today with a rare video from inside my lair. And it's been a while since I talked about my VW project, so I figured I'd just show you guys where I was kind of at when I put it aside. My bug's not even running right now. The engine finally ran its last mile. I don't have anything witty to say about it, but it's down for a rebuild and it's going to be a while, so this project's just kind of off to the side, but I did make some good progress since you last saw my breadboard spread out on the Doritos box. So I talk about it a little bit as I get ready to finish it up. Just gotta throw my Android developing stuff back on my laptop, but let's see, I did make progress, and I'll show you a little bit about it. And just got a couple things to do still. I got a program. I'm switching from an analog to a digital temperature probe, and the type of outputs or inputs are changing. So I just gotta make some slight adjustments, but the hardware is all done, and we'll go over that right now. So I got most of my parts from SparkFun. I think I talked about that, but I'm not sure. So I got this handy little enclosure box. It's actually pretty heavy duty if what they advertised it as, but it comes with this nice huge lid too. And even though the overall size, it's nice, it's got a nice rubber seal, so when it's mounted in the front trunk of the Bug, which isn't exactly weatherproof as far as humidity and condensation and all that natural element goes, it'll keep it nice and safe and hopefully damage free. It'll be running for a long time, even though it's a little bit of overkill. But I wanted something a little bigger because I'm going to put the voltage regulator and everything for this system in here, so I wanted plenty of room to work around. But you'll see the Arduino Uno is secured in there. Basically all I did is I just ordered a little standoff kit with all the stuff from SparkFun, and I marked where they're going to go to support the Arduino over on the side there. I figured out the best spot. The enclosure came with some standoffs. I don't know if you can see those precast into the bottom, but the spacings didn't really work with what I wanted, so I got some standoffs that are a little taller than the stock ones so they wouldn't interfere. I'm just using some sandpaper. This is weird. Sanded off the bottoms where I wanted them, sanded the standoffs a little bit, and just used some regular super glue in there really good. So they're spaced because the proto boards or proto shields I got from SparkFun only have 2 mounting holes. Where are they? This corner and this bottom corner here, and of course the Arduino has 4. So when I have it all mounted up, I use the holes that don't pass through the proto shields to secure this into there, and then the other 2 screws just sandwich the whole assembly together. So there's no reason talking about the Arduino. We already know what that is, but look at some of my custom circuitry here. So there's 2 proto shields and the Arduino that make up my entire circuit. The middle board is basically what I call the I guess the interface layer, you could call it. It takes the 12-volt signals from the car and translates them down to the 5-volt signals that the Arduino can use without burning it up. And it's just a bunch of ISO oscillators on there. I forget the exact model I used, but it's not a generic one. It's well, it is generic, but it's not a generic brand per se. It's from Fry's Electronics, so their reference numbers don't really match anything that makes sense to anybody else. Anyway, so there's just 6 opto isolators on there, and you've got all the pull down resistors and everything on there, all the wiring. There's the back of the boards to make all the connections on the back side, and I used solid wires for all of these. They were really easy to bend and manipulate into the exact shapes I needed to fit the boards. And it's been a while since I made these now, so my memory's a little foggy, but you know, I just sat down with my schematic and planned out the boards, and then once I was happy with the layout, I just soldered it all down. So that's the middle board, and that takes the signals and switches them down, and this gets fed from my top board. Let's get some of this stuff out of the way. This is going to be the power harness from the regulator that powers the whole circuit, and that feeds into this little white power connector right there. Also have two other main connectors. This one is going to be the connector for the LCDs, basically the whole head unit up in the dash somewhere. And this one, the bottom row, is going to be all the input signals, as well as the digital inputs from the sensors that I'm making, the RPM and the temperature sensor, which I'm not making but adding to the car. So this board connects to the interface layer through these pins I put in. On the interface layer is a row of 6 male pins that fit into a socket on the bottom of the top board. So these all mate together nicely. You know, you got the regular pins that basically just pass through from the Arduino itself, and then the signal specific pins in the middle. I don't know if, yeah, you can't see those, but the whole thing just sandwiches together really nice, and then that makes up my little system there. So my little device plugs into the I/O pins of the Arduino, and just like that, there it is. There's the VW MFU. So that secures into the little box. I have most of the parts I need. I need a few other odds and ends still. Like this end is going to be for the head, the control head. I'm going to use a DB15 or like a VGA connector to connect all the other signals. And I have some machinist friends, since I'm not very good with those types of tools, nor do I have the appropriate tools. They're going to cut out the appropriate size holes for me for those connectors to pass through, and I'll be able to seal them and then keep this thing completely tight to the elements. That's not everything. A couple more things to talk about here. I did get the little real-time chip. It's got a 1307, I believe, with a little oscillator crystal and everything on there. I think it's a 1307. Yeah, DS1307. So that's from SparkFun 2. Excuse me, that's from SparkFun 2. That was only a couple dollars. And that connects to a little header right here. So boop, pop that on, bam. I now have my time clock that the computer will use to pull the time and date and display it up on the control head when it's idle. So that's what it looks like with the chip involved. Then we have, installed, excuse me, the power connector. Let's plug into that, and that'll go to the regulator somewhere else in the box. I haven't built that yet. And my little harness that'll connect the board to its input-output head, and that goes right in here. Now this was just I think actually I just got a long strip of female headers from SparkFun, and I just cut them down to size, and I keyed it so it will only go into the device one way. It makes it a little simpler for me. And I just the same thing. I used sandpaper to rough up both edges and used super glue and when you prep your plastic correctly, super glue is just as good as a solid piece. I find it's very sturdy, so I don't worry about that at all. So I mean, that's essentially it. And I haven't made the harness yet to go from these pins to the DB15. I still need to get a couple parts to complete that. So there we go. That's the VW MFU. It's a reality. I just gotta finish a couple small things. Power connector. So, you know, a lot of the default signals I'm using, door open, oil pressure, that's all part of the car already. But I did talk about adding an RPM sensor or an RPM meter on screen. And here's the very tiny little device that's going to do that. And it's just another opto isolator in there with its pull down resistor and very simple circuit. This should work just fine. And same thing, I just used a solid core wire to map out the traces in the back and soldered it down. Now these little 5x5 boards SparkFun was selling for some other reason. You're supposed to be able to make some sort of interesting devices, but they were also perfect for my needs for just making these small little circuits. In fact, I bought another one here, which I'm going to build the little regulator on, and I think that'll do just nicely. But anyways, going back to this for a sec. So the hobby enclosure is also from SparkFun. Pretty much everything is. So I just made that. It's got the input, the ground, and the signal wires. So 12 volts, I can tap that from the coil. The green will go to the negative side of the coil, and that pulses as the ignition system works, and just a regular ground as well, just for the circuit. And twisted the wires together. I put I forget, 1/4 inch hole, maybe 3/8, I'm not sure. Either way, it's just a small hole. I had some grommets to fit, so I stuck the grommet in there, and I'll dab some sealant in there when it's all done. I have some double-sided tape in there too that'll just hold it all nicely. And, you know, paint it black and hide it somewhere in the engine bay. It won't be very noticeable. In fact, it might look kind of cool, spark some conversation. What's that? Oh, let me show you. It'll be pretty cool. So that'll go up in the engine compartment, or maybe on the cooling shroud of the motor or something, somewhere just kind of out of sight. Here's the digital temperature probe. Again, it's been a while, so I don't recall the part number, but it's all encased and epoxy sealed. And SparkFun has a couple versions of these, I think. Or I've seen another version of this where it's actually a stainless steel tip too, and that looks pretty cool. I was kind of upset I didn't see that first. It was even cheaper than this one from SparkFun, so I forget where I saw it. But anyways, it's going to be tucked up somewhere. No one's ever going to see it, so it didn't really matter. It didn't cry about it for too long. But you know, it's got plenty of wire. It came just like this. I think I put a connector on it, but I was just excited and hasty. I'm going to end up having to cut this off anyway, because it's going to need to connect to the end of that DB15. So that's not going to do me any good, but, you know, stuff this up somewhere under the front little air induction. There's no heating, or excuse me, no cooling system or anything up there, so I'll have to find somewhere creative where there's good airflow to get a temperature reading. And that's essentially it. A couple other things I did here. I made this nice fancy cable. I got myself a, you know, a little housing and it's essentially just a serial connector. Got myself some nice quality shielded 8 conductor. Yeah, it was 8 conductor, and I also used the shield to pass the ground, so I'm using all 9 pins. And this is the side that will connect to the box. I just soldered it all up, put the little enclosure together, and Fry's also had these really nice barrel jacks. So it's essentially a S-video in there, I think. I'm not sure, but it's a 9-pin, and it was a kit. So you solder onto the pins, and you put the plastic shell together. Then the sleeve goes over it, and it kind of makes it one nice whole unit. And here's the other half of that, and that's going to go on the display head. So this will plug into the box somewhere with the nice screw down terminals, and however I integrate the display head yet, I haven't figured it out, but that'll be a nice easy discrete connection that I can tuck up somewhere. Just a second. So that's almost it, and the final piece to show you is the control head itself. Keep in mind, this is just prototype. This thing's ugly, and I just threw this together for testing, and I haven't even gotten as far as testing yet. But essentially the layout will be very similar to this. So I have my LCD screen in here. I got my warning lights on the edge, the ones we saw earlier. These are going to be, you know, the page up and page down. And this is going to be the start sequence button. So you press this. If the engine's not running, the computer will essentially start the start sequence. It'll close the relay to power the starter, and it'll watch the RPM input. Once the RPM input comes up to about 500, 600 more, it'll know the engine's running on its own. Starter can't spin it that fast, and it'll turn off the starter relay, and engine will be started. Make it display a little cute message or something. Yay, engine's running, or I don't know. But yeah, so I'm not sure if I'm just going to build stuff onto a panel like this and then put the panel somewhere, or if I'm still going to go ahead and find a way to integrate this into the dash itself without having a panel attached. But that's still far away. I'm not even concerned about that at the moment. So that's it. I wish I had it together enough to show you again, but you've already seen it in operation, so there's no point in showing you the same stuff again. But that's my progress thus far. I'm hoping to get my engine back together and the car running, if not before the new year, shortly after. And we'll finish this up probably around the holidays and get it all ready to go in. I'm pretty excited. So that's it. Dave signing off, and until next time, I guess.